Hello, bonjour and welcome to your new Alti Wine Exchange video where we learn and often taste the wonderful world of fine and rare wine. This is episode 3 of a 6-part series where we look at everything that you need to know about the wines from Burgundy. And we're getting into the granulous details today, into the nitty-gritty of what makes Burgundy wine so special. We're going to be focusing on the top white wines from Burgundy today, which are all Chardonnay wines and among the most reputable whites in the world, and looking at how they are different from one another. If you like fine wine, you've probably heard about Chablis, Meursault, Chassagne Montrachet and Puligny-Montrachet, right? But do you know exactly, practically, how they differ? Well, stay tuned and let's have a look into this precisely. Meursault is the largest appellation for white wines in the Côte d'Or part of Burgundy by quite a margin. It's much bigger than Chassagne and Puligny, we'll talk about in a minute. Virtually all wines here in Meursault are whites, but there is no Grand Cru in Meursault, somewhat surprisingly. There are some of the best, but no Grand Crus. Only Premier Crus and 17 of them, each of which have their own designation and name that features on wine labels like is usual in Burgundy. But 3 of these Premier Crus sit above the others as the most reputable ones. Those are Les Perrières, Les Genévrières and Les Charmes. 3 vineyards that are actually by the border with Puligny appellation, on the Puligny side of the Meursault appellation. And those 3 produce some of the region's greatest white wines, full stop. Perrières in particular is generally considered as making wines of Grand Cru quality, a reputation that is often reflected in its price too. Meursault is the classic style when it comes to Burgundy wines, as the terroir around the village is really rather unique. Meursault is the most opulent style of Burgundy Chardonnay. Wines are generally nutty and rich. They're round and generous with some hints of honey, some buttery, vanilla and spices from the oak. You may even get some notes of ripe tropical fruits in warmer vintages. Of course, we're nowhere near the richness and butteriness of warmer climates like in the New World, in particular, like in California specifically. Burgundy is one of the very coolest wine regions in France, cool in temperature, and the world, after all, also very cool compared to anywhere around the world. You'd have to look at Champagne to find Chardonnay grown in cooler climates. So Meursault wines are still very vibrant and zingy, but they are the ones in Burgundy that are more on the generous, rich and opulent side of things when it comes to wine style, more than the other 4 champion villages and appellations we'll be looking at next. When it comes to white wines from Burgundy, Puligny-Montrachet is often the most obviously highly regarded village, with a reputation based on its 4 Grand Crus. The Grand Cru, called simply Montrachet, is by many considered to be the greatest wine in the world, white wine. Take the Montrachet wine made by one of the producers in Burgundy, like Romanée-Conti, one of the top producers of Burgundy, and you'll inevitably get one of the most sought after and expensive white wine on the planet for sure. The famous Chevalier Montrachet Grand Cru is perhaps not as deep and profound as Montrachet, a little more generous as well, yet it's often quoted as the second best. But the other 2 Grand Crus, Bâtard Montrachet and Bienvenue Bâtard Montrachet, depending on the producer and the vintage, can be equally as good, Bâtard being more richly textured than Bienvenue, which is a little bit more about the finesse. But Puligny also counts with a wealth of outstanding Premier Cru vineyards that can reach Grand Cru quality and prices, such as Le Cailleret and Les Pucelles in particular, which both lie just across the road from Le Montrachet. No wonders here. But overall, Puligny wines are considered to be some of the finest whites in the Côte d'Or. Finest as in having the most finesse and elegance, the balance, the minerality, the floral elegance as well, the stylish concentration. Mineral yet just generous enough, as close to perfect balance as you can get, hence them being so highly praised and highly prized. While Puligny, the village and appellation, sits just south of Meursault and Chassagne Montrachet lies just south of Puligny, those are three neighbor villages with Puligny between the other two, Meursault, Puligny and Chassagne. When it comes to style though, Chassagne is considered somewhat in between Meursault and Puligny. In fact, the very best Grand Crus for whites in Burgundy are in this very spot where Puligny and Chassagne meet, to the south of Puligny, the north of Chassagne. Those two villages in fact share two Grand Crus, le Montrachet and Montrachet that we've just talked about, which lie across both sides of the border, Puligny-Chassagne. The third Grand Cru of Chassagne that is exclusive to Chassagne is called Montrachet, entirely on the Chassagne side of the border. And it is altogether very fragrant, also very fine and very rare. Chassagne's premier crus are often less highly regarded as the ones from Meursault and Puligny, perhaps because of a less clean-cut, a less obvious, a less understood style difference. But of course they are still a great source of outstanding wines. Talking about Chardonnay wine style, Chassagne's is often defined as lying between Puligny and Meursault, as we said, because it is perhaps not quite as fine as Puligny, generally speaking, but less rich than a Meursault. More mineral and restrained than Meursault, yet not as elegant and profound as a Puligny. Mineral, yet succulent is how you could summarize it. Some find it's the best of both worlds, some prefer Meursault, some prefer a Puligny style. A little north from the three villages that we've talked about lies one of the most recognizable features in Burgundy wine country, the beautiful vineyard landscapes of Burgundy, and that's the hill of Corton, famous in particular for its remarkable red wines. But the hill also hosts, don't forget, a Grand Cru appellation for whites that's called obviously Corton-Charlemagne. They are also among the most reputable whites in Burgundy. If you take the Charlemagne made by one of Burgundy's top producers like Leroy, for example, well, you also get a recipe for one of the most extraordinary and expensive wine in the world. Corton-Charlemagne style is perhaps a little harder to define, but most find both a powerful minerality and a concentrated and fruity richness that can go as far as featuring notes of figs and baked pears. So powerful and mineral all at the same time, powerful and minerality pulling at both ends of the spectrum thanks to a very rare concentration is how you could summarize it. But when those qualities work together harmoniously in a single glass, in a single bottle of wine, in a great vintage, it is the recipe for a truly outstanding white wine. And finally, yes, let's talk about Chablis. We've all heard about Chablis. For one, it's because it's a large appellation covering 23% of all Burgundy vineyards, so yes, it's big, and it's more than 10 times bigger than Meursault. But Chablis is rather far away from the rest of Burgundy. It's its own little, or maybe big island of vineyards that is in fact closer to the southern end of Champagne than the heart of Burgundy wine country. So the soil here is different from the rest of Burgundy because it's quite apart. But so is the climate as well, because it's north. So yes, Chablis is cooler, which is combined with the local soil type that makes the wines both famously among some of the most mineral, crisp and precise Chardonnays in the world. Chablis producers also make a more conservative use of oak, retaining the citrusy, the sharpness, the tension, the subtle aromatic elegance of the wines. So Chablis wines are zingy and the pure expression of the limestone Kiméridian terroir. That's a rare type of specific limestone soil that they have in Chablis. Here you will find 4 levels from Petit Chablis, Chablis Village, Premier Cru and then Grand Cru, all with a remarkable consistency of quality and style, which has made the reputation of Chablis. There is a lot of Chablis, but it's virtually always good at any level. This is why everyone knows Chablis all around the world, because it is a bigger area, so you can buy it, you can find it everywhere, but it has a very more complex and a very diverse topography and a more varied vineyard exposure than some other appellations, so the styles can vary locally, relatively speaking, quite a bit, always within this mineral and precise frame, but making for small variations that are absolutely fascinating to explore for the curious wine connoisseur. All of the 7 Grand Crus of Chablis are stacked up in one single southwest facing slope above the village. They are some of the finest wines in Burgundy for their unique mineral expression of the Chardonnay grown on limestone with no artifacts. The wines are a little less rare than in the Côte d'Or, so they don't often reach the very high end of the pricing spectrum, with perhaps the exception of L'Éclos, the most reputable of all 7 Grand Cru Climat in Chablis. And this is what you needed to know about the top 5 finest Chardonnay wines from Burgundy. Next week we will look at the best Pinot Noir wines, continuing our tour of the best wines in the region, with such iconic wines of course as Vosne Romanée, Gevrey-Chambertin, Nuits Saint-Georges and many more, the best Pinot Noirs of Burgundy. So make sure to stay tuned to the channel. If you've missed previous episodes 1 and 2 of the Burgundy series, I'll link to them in the video description and in the cards appearing right here and here at the end. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Cheers!